Namaste, Hare Krishna, welcome. Duvid here. We are live. Honored to have special guest, Professor Dr. Bharat Jhunjhunwala, who I just met this last week, thanks to River, who is a semi-regular viewer of Week in Review. And River, he has very interesting research, something that I've been thinking about myself for decades now, on the commonalities between Vedic literature, Vedic story, philosophies, history, and the biblical Torah, Jewish narrative. He's the author of multiple books. Sorry, just going to do a quick screen share here. So here is Bharat's Amazon page. So you see he has a book, Common Prophets of the Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Hindus. That's the book that I read for this interview. Maybe towards the end, we'll also talk about some of his other literature, specifically Indian approach to women's empowerment. And then he has co-author on business statistics. And Duvid is a civil engineer, University of Michigan alumni. And so maybe towards the end, we'll also briefly talk about some of his professional literature. His book on economics of river flows, lessons from dam removals in America, and economics on hydropower. That's linked in the description of the video. And here you can see Dr. Bharat's YouTube page, where he has multiple videos on the topic. And then I will also share his.
David, there is too much echo. There is too. I'm hearing the sounds twice. Much echo
on the topic, and then I will also share. I hope it's not a problem. It appears to not be. We'll see if someone watching, if someone in the live audience or the feedback could do could tell me whether they have a problem. This is Bharat's one of his earlier times using the program. It could be if you plugged in headphones that it's only on your end and it's not on the live. So if and we got a few people in the chat.
David, I can't understand anything. Your voice is coming back after a time lag, and I'm hearing you twice after a lag.
Oh, do you have the YouTube video open?
Okay, maybe.
So just you could keep the YouTube video open and just shut the volume off on the YouTube video.
Okay. Now it's okay. I understand.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Duvid has been training people on StreamYards, and my streaming partner, regular Church of Entropy. We're tech people. Dr. Jhunjhunwala is actually a professor of management, and but this streaming technology is recent, so it would be my pleasure. And I mentioned before that I would be happy to assist Bharat in using the technology if he wants to use that to advance these conversations. So let me allow Bharat to introduce himself, give a bio. My audience likes long bios, so if you want to start out kind of like, I mean, you don't have to do too much professionally, but briefly professionally, but more specifically how you came to be interested in these topics, and I guess you're already. I believe Dr. Jhunjhunwala is 77 years old, so he's been researching this longer than most of us have been alive. So if you want to give an overview of how you came to be interested in these subjects and the type of research you've done over your lifetime, and then we'll jump straight into your research.
Great. So, I was born in a family of industrialists. My family owned a couple of sugar factories, paper factories. I was born, so to say, with a silver spoon in my mouth. And childhood was very simple, easy, no issues, no problems. Then after I completed my bachelor's degree in science, I decided to go to the United States to study. And I got admission at the University of Florida. And initially I went there to study agricultural engineering, but then I moved to agricultural economics. And those were the best, perhaps the best time of my life. And the most memorable thing I have from University of Florida is that I used to volunteer at the Suicide and Crisis Intervention Service of the university. So we used to ask people, we used to answer people's phones who were in distress or who had some difficulties and counsel them. Then I became a senior counselor, and we used to go on field visits, counseling people. I was especially a marital counselor where there were marital disputes. Then, and I was 22 then, 21 or 22. And so I used to do that. Then I got an offer to do a job in the US at the Research Triangle Institute in Virginia. I think it's West Virginia. But then I decided, no, my calling was in India. I wanted to do something for the poor of this country and for my country. And so I decided to come back. I joined the Indian Institute of Management as a professor of economics. Now, my most memorable thing that I did at the IIM, that's the short form for Indian Institute of Management. The IIM is like the Harvard Business School of India, IIM Bangalore. So that's the top institute of management in India. But I was feeling suffocated. So I bought a shanty. I bought a shanty for at that time for rupees 400, which would have been US dollar 20 at that time, $10 at that time or something like that. It had a straw roof, no lighting. I used to work with a lantern, and the only furniture was one wooden bed. And I used to eat with the people in the slum, and work with them, educate them, run a school for them and things of that kind. So that gave me, for the first time in my life, an exposure of what is poverty, what is poor like. But then I realized that it is not possible to do anything directly for the poor. It's kind of a band-aid, so, patchwork. If some poor people are dying, you can go and distribute some food, but the root causes of poverty are not removed. So I decided to move out, do some more theoretical work. And at the same time, my family, there was what we call a family partition, in the sense the businesses owned by my family were divided amongst us 6 brothers. And one small paper factory came to my share. And I was feeling suffocated at IIM, so I decided to jump, and I decided to become a businessman. For 10 years, I ran that factory, sometimes good, but at the end of the day, I just could not manage it. I think it is my temperament was not suitable for business. So I closed it, and then I took to writing a column for the Indian newspapers. I still write my weekly column. And it is published in about 25 newspapers with a combined readership of maybe, what would it be, 10 million printouts every week or something of that type. And while I was running my factory, I should share with you, I have one nice wife. She's very supporting, and I have 2 daughters. They're both married. One is now located in London. One is located in New Jersey. And me and my wife, we live in the Himalayas in Uttarakhand. And I'm very happy, satisfied, very enjoying my stay in the mountains. When I was running the factory, I went on a pilgrimage. One of the places which is supposed to be holy in the Hindu tradition is a place called Pushkar in Rajasthan, in the state of Rajasthan in northwestern India. And I was reading the Bible at the same time, and there I found that on a small mountain, the mountain is very small, only about 100 feet high or something like that. But on a small mountain, there was a temple of whom we call Lord Brahma. Now, Brahma is the creator in the Hindu tradition. So there was a temple on a mountain. And most interestingly, from the base of that mountain, there were 4 rivers going out in 4 directions. Now, I was reading the Bible at the same time, and it immediately struck me that this is exactly what the Garden of Eden is told of in the Bible, because the uniqueness is that you have 4 rivers going in 4 directions. Yeah, usually the gradient of a land is on one side, but here we had a situation where this mound is a small mound, but the overall topography of the area was that there was slope on all 4 sides. So there were 4 rivers. So that actually set me thinking whether because there were 3 things. One is that the Hindu seat of creation was there, just like Adam was the first man. It was located on a mountain, just as Garden of Eden was located on a mountain. I think in Ezekiel it is said so. And there were 4 rivers flowing in 4 directions. So it struck me that this may be the Garden of Eden. So that led me to do more research. So I went into the Bible, did more research, did more study on archaeology. Then I started visiting. If the Garden of Eden was here, then the other places should also be here. So, for example, I found a place where there is a huge tradition of a flood in India. There is a place called Jalore, Jalore, and Jal, Jal in Hindi means water. So Jalore means the city of water, and there is a huge tradition of flood there. Um, and it is in a kind of a bowl-like situation. So the water of the flood stays in Jalore for a long period of time. I visited once, and 2 months after the rains, certain areas were still inundated with water because the water had no place to go, so it stayed put. So that gave me a link with Noah. That another interesting point is that the mountain near Jalore is called Aravali, Aravali. Now, Aravali and Ararat are similar. So the biblical mountain of Ararat, where Noah's boat came to rest, could be the Aravali mountain here. So that is how I found some connection with Noah. Then in Pushkar itself, there is a place called Ram Jharoka. That is window of Rama. Now, one of the most dramatic events in the biblical narrative is Abraham's willing to sacrifice his son, and his offering his son, about to sacrifice, then the ram is found. And I found that at Ram Jharoka, there is a particular place which is like a sacrificial place. So I found another connection that perhaps Abraham was located here. And then we have the Moses story. And there, in the Hindu tradition, Moses, there is a prophet. We don't have prophets. We have avatars or incarnations of God, and one of the most important incarnations is that of Krishna. Now, the Krishna says that the Hindu texts say that towards the end of his life, Krishna left the Indus Valley, left his home, and went to an unknown country. Now the question is that, and there the story of Krishna ends. After that, the Hindu text absolutely goes silent. We just don't know anything about what happened where Krishna went, what happened to him. There is absolutely nothing. But I thought that maybe this was the Exodus. So if Krishna left the Indus Valley for Israel, from the Indian standpoint, it would appear like he is going to an unknown country. And so Krishna may have gone to Israel, and that may have been recorded in the Hindu text as Krishna having gone to an unknown country. So what I found is that we have what I found is that 5 parallels between 5 persons, or I prefer to use the word divine persons, because it is does not claim to be prophet or anything like that. 5 persons. David, if we can go to the genealogy chart, little down, just down. Yeah, this chart, please. So what I found is that we have on the left side, I have the biblical genealogy. On the right hand side, I have the Hindu genealogy. On the left side, the first person is Adam. And on the right side, the first person is Swayambhu Manu. Swayambhu means self-born or self-made. So Adam was the first person in the biblical tradition, and Swayambhu Manu was the first person in the Hindu tradition. And both are approximately at 4000 BCE. So that is where I begin the concordance between the common prophets. The Adam had 3 sons: Cain, Abel, and Seth.
I'll let you finish, but I want to ask you about, so to say, sectarianism within Hinduism and the difficulty of giving one Hindu Vedic narrative. Is obviously a lot of the Vedic timelines say the world is billions of years old and that man has existed for billions of years even. But we could talk about that later, or if you want to mention that now.
Personally, just to give a short reply.
Michael Cremo, the author of Forbidden Archaeology, he's an ISKCON devotee, Human Devolution, and he was part of the Mayapur Vedic Planetarian Advisor Committee, and he's been arguing that mankind existed for billions of years against the archaeological record in terms of certain Vedic records that would contradict, and they call old Earth creationism. That man. But if you want to address that now, or we could talk about that later.
Since you raised it, let me address it very briefly. My take is that the billions of years is a hyperbole, and the Hindu timeline that I am talking about. You see, this does not preclude an earlier human civilization that may be there, may not be there. It's beyond the scope of my study. What I am finding is that this particular concordance between 5 persons in the Bible and 5 persons in the Hindu text, this works. So, and this works both in terms of time. If there was something earlier, we don't know, like we can talk about that later. But let me continue with this concordance. And Swayambhu Manu had 3 sons. More importantly, just as Cain killed Abel, one of his sons, who was Indra, killed his brother Vritta. So we have an absolute mirror image of Adam's sons and Swayambhu Manu's son. Then the line continues. The son of Seth was Noah, the descendant of Seth was Noah, and the descendant of the third son, Vivaswan, was Vaivasvat Manu. At the time of Noah, there was flood, and again at the time of Vaivasvat Manu, there was flood. If we can go a little down in the slide, please. Yeah, please. Then we come to the next. The descendant of Noah was Abraham or Abraham. Descendant of Vaivasvat Manu was Ram. Now you see the name Abraham, his original name was Abram. Ab means father. So Abraham, the original name is Father Ram. And his parallel or concordant in the Hindu tradition is Ram. So, and both are at the time of about 2000 BCE. And the
But just so you
last,
mentioned that most linguists make the connection of Abraham to Brahman, and because
yes, but
Rama.
I'm not convinced about that at all. I'm not convinced about that at all. I think they are going more on the etymology, just because Abraham has Brahma embedded into it, but they don't realize that Brahma, Abraham's original name was Abram, where there is no H. So I'm not convinced of that at all. I'm not convinced of that at all. I
Okay,
think.
I just thought I'd mention that because that's the more common understanding and parallels from Abraham to Brahma.
That is true. That is true. But then another difference is that Brahma is not a person like Abraham. Brahma is a psychological entity. He's a god, whereas Abraham is a human being, and Rama is indeed a human being, although incarnation, but he is a human being. So,
We'll
and the
talk more
last,
about what you mean about, like, say, personality, and so a lot of people, like the historicity, the historical Abraham, whether Abraham actually existed or is a mythological character, and to what do you mean by personality, the same person? So, I mean, Hindus would probably understand this concept of the same person, but in Western academic circles, it might be what do you mean the same person? And when people in Western academic circles talk about the historical Abraham, the historical Moses, the historical Jesus, and then in comparison, the historical Ram, or from the Vedic stories, and most academic scholars, you would say that it's mythologized, or maybe they didn't even exist, and it's mythologies based possibly on a real person or completely made up. But just briefly, for the sake of the audience, what do you mean by the same person?
yeah, you see, I'm from whatever I'm familiar with the Western academic views. I don't think there is a serious challenge to the idea that even a myth has some historical antecedents. So, and Joseph Campbell, I would like to quote Joseph Campbell on this, that myths don't arise in vacuum. So, the difficulty with all the difficulty with Adam, Cain, Noah, especially, is because we don't get the historical or the archaeological record to support their existence. But I think there is more, there is a greater acceptance of the fact that Abraham and Moses were historical persons, whereas the before the table of nations, before Genesis 10, Genesis 1 to 10 are mythological. That is seems to be the mainstream idea. But Genesis 11 onwards, which is the narrative of Abraham and Moses and their descendants, I think it is largely accepted to be historical. But even if some people challenge that historicity, I would go ahead and say that, look, for me, they are historical persons. And well, we can discuss that some other time. But for the time being, they are historical persons as far as I can understand. And if they were historical persons, Abraham and Moses, that means in life and flesh and blood, then the two persons corresponding to them are Rama and Krishna. Now, Rama, we have some very interesting parallels in the lives of Abraham and Ram. Abraham went south with his wife, and his wife was sent or taken to the house of the Pharaoh. Rama went south with his wife, and his wife Sita was abducted by the king of the south. So she also went to the palace of the king of the south. Then they returned, just as Abraham returned. Similarly, Rama also returned. Abraham had a conflict with his brother Lot, and Rama had a conflict with his brother Lakshman. And that similarly, parallels go on and on and on. Now we come to, I think I'll speak for a few minutes and then give it more time for discussion. So, then the last of the five divine persons that I'm talking about is Moses. Now, Moses was born in distress, we all know. Krishna too was born in distress. His parents were jailed by the king of the south, the king of Mathura. The name of Krishna's place is Mathura, which is similar to the Mitzrayim of Moses in the Bible. So Krishna's parents were jailed, and he was born in a jail. And the narrative is that his father smuggled him out of the jail, took him across the river in a basket. Now here you have a very interesting parallel. Just as Moses was flown in a basket on the river to save him from death, similarly Krishna was taken across the river in a basket to save him from death. Then, just as Moses killed a Mitzrayite and ran away, Krishna killed the king, one of the kings of the south, who is Kamsa, and then fled. And as I said in the beginning, Moses left his Mitzrayim with his entourage or with his group for Israel, and Krishna left for an unknown country. So what I'm finding is that we have five divine persons in both the traditions, whose time is matching, whose genealogy is matching, whose narratives are matching, whose many names are matching, and therefore it seems to me that there has to be a very deep common relationship between these two traditions. Personally, I am of the view that they are the same persons. I am of the view that the person in flesh and blood whom the Abrahamic religions considered to be Adam was the same person whom the Hindus considered to be Swambhu, and so on. So to my mind, Moses and Krishna, this is the picture of Krishna being taken across the river in a basket, which is very popular in India, which you will see immediately. It is similar to Moses being put in a basket and flown into the river to save him from death. So I am of the view that what has happened is that the Moses or Krishna, who is the same person, left the Indus Valley. They settled in Israel. But then during the exile into Babylon and other persecutions, they lost the memory of Indus Valley. And when the Septuagint Bible was composed by Ptolemy around, I think, 2nd century BCE, at that time, they had these traditions, but they did not know where they were. And so they relocated these places in West Asia. So that is how Mitzrayim got located in Egypt, and River Jordan became River Jordan of Israel, and so on and so forth. But if you look at the historical, the archaeological evidence, the geographical evidence, there is so much that is common to both the traditions that it cannot simply be just a helicopter that some similar ideas have been put inside by coincidence or something like that. I think, David, I think this is a good time to take a break and and ask if some people would like to ask any questions, or we can have any discussion. Thank you, David.
Definitely, I appreciate your reasonably detailed explanation. Just random, there was a guy calling himself Adam Cadman, which asked if you believe in astral projections or the influence of astral projections on man. It's not that relevant to your research or conversation, but someone in the chat asked that right away.
Yes, I will explain what is my understanding of astrology. I do believe in astrology, but I don't necessarily believe in the projections. You see, what I understand is that our spinal cord has 7 major psychic centers, and they are, in the Hindu astrology, they are connected with, or believed to be connected with, 7 planets. So what we have in the Hindu system is each planet is the guide, you can say, or a symptom, you can say, or an anchor, you can say, of a particular psychic center. So what Hindu psychology, Hindu astrology says, that at the time of your birth, the particular planetary constellations influence your psyche, or the seven psychic centers in your spinal cord, and they determine to not determine, they influence your likes, dislikes, your life trajectory, and things of that kind. So I do believe that as planets influence our lives, but I do not believe they determine, because the Hindu tradition, and I personally believe that there are three causes: what we inherit, what we do, and random events. What takes place is a combination of these three factors, which is the inheritance, random factors, and your own effort. So the astrology can tell you something about your inheritance, but it does not tell you anything about what you do. So you can, there is no reason to get uh, cowed down, so to say, by astrology, and we can still use the astrological information to, just as we have sun signs in the Western system, where it helps you understand what is your character. It is something of that type that I do believe in. I do believe in astrology to that extent.
Okay, yeah, I guess just not directly on topic, but you're just interesting your belief system. So let's try to delve into this concept of the same person. So there could be I propose what I'm calling a multiple truth hypothesis, and it's really based after years of doing interfaith, although I've widened it out to even wider metaphysics, epistemology, and even maybe scientific logic on what is the truth? How much can we know of the truth? The problem of empiricism, that if you're saying that, so to say, the Hindu tradition, the Vedic tradition is the correct tradition, and the biblical tradition is some sort of partial understanding, or saying that the truth is more than we could understand in the Vedic and the biblical tradition, are both our best grasps at understanding something that's basically beyond our understanding. When you talk about the same person, if you're saying that there was only one character and both accounts are indicative of part of the truth of the same characters, or you're saying that one account is more true, so to say, than the other, or even the question of was it Israel or the Middle East, or was it India? And you're saying that, like, if it was one person, then it would appear that it was one or the other, and one account is right, one account is wrong. And then within Hinduism or greater spirituality, you could have like avatar theory, where or even Kabbalistically, like you could have two different things happening at the same time in different places, or some sort of spiritual force that like a demigod, a devi, that the Krishna, Moses, Abraham, they weren't regular people like me and you that myths were formed around, but they were some sort of higher spiritual force. And then in terms of that, you're saying it wasn't the same person, but was the same spiritual force that was manifested in a similar way in two different places.
Shall I speak now? Okay.
Yes, I want to know exactly what you're saying. So I see a realm of possibilities, where you could be saying the Vedic account is accurate, the biblical account is inaccurate, or you could be saying that like the same person, or you say that there was like one spiritual force, like demigod, that was represented in two different places of the same spiritual force.
My position, my take is slightly different. I believe let's say if we have the history of the World War II, the Russians would write it differently, the British would write it differently, the German new Nazis would write it differently. So it is something of this type. There was one set of one person or one history, and different descendants have remembered different parts of that common heritage. So what you have is that the two narratives, as I explained in the narrative of Abraham, of Sarah being taken to the Pharaoh's house and Sita being abducted by Ravana, that the same events have been remembered in slightly variant themes, and they gel with each other, they coalesce with each other. So there is no question of one being superior to the other. It is like two grandchildren remembering their grandfather, different aspects of their grandfather. So one cannot say that one child's view is correct and another is incorrect. I think both are exactly parallel, both are equally reliable, and over a period of time during transmission, there have been certain corruptions in both the traditions. But the inner core of both the tradition is exactly the same, and it coalesces. That what is important is it jives together. Now, so first thing is that I'm absolutely refuse to say that one is better than the other. I think there are two accounts of the same event. Now, the question whether they could have lived at two different places with some kind of spiritual force, I think the question is of geography. If the geographical descriptions of these five persons also also match with each other, then one thing is clear, that they are from the same geographical area. And then we can see whether the geographical descriptions match with the Indus Valley or with West Asia. And then my take is very clear that the geographical description, just as I mentioned in the beginning of the Pushkar and the four rivers of Garden of Eden, they match very much with the Indian Indus Valley rather than with the West Asia. So to give you one very interesting example, the parting of the Red Sea during the Exodus, the word for Red Sea in the Hebrew Bible is Yam Suf, which means the water which makes noise. So it's a large water body. Now, historians have struggled with finding some phenomena in Egypt which would be similar to the parting of the Red Sea or the parting of the sea. But in Indus Valley, we have a phenomena called mud volcanoes. So what happens is that the volcano erupts and it spews out a lot of mud. So my suspicion, my speculation, this is purely speculation, but I think it's something that needs to be examined, is that a mud volcano erupted upstream of where the Moses wanted to cross the Indus River. So Yamsuf is the Indus River, and a mud volcano erupted upstream of the place where they wanted to cross. It stopped the water, held the water for some time. The river became dry. The Hebrews crossed the Indus River on dry land, and then since it was a mud volcano, it got eroded and the water came back and drowned the Pharaoh. So a geographical phenomena like this is simply not known in West Asia. So what I would say is that while I am open to the possibility that one person may have been in West Asia, I am not denying that. But I think it requires a dispassionate looking at all the geographical factors, whether that geographical descriptions match with West Asia or with India. That's how I would look at
it. And what about, so to say, the religious takes or implications? If you're saying like the prophets or that God chose certain people or people merited to become prophets and give this message to humanity. So are you taking an atheistic historical approach or some sort of dual approach or a spiritual approach?
I don't know how to classify myself. My thinking is this. The more I look into the theology of the Bible, you see, in the Hindu tradition, we have two concepts of God. One is the impersonal God and one is personal God. Now, I find the same parallel in Elohim and Yahweh. So, to my mind, the monotheism of the Abrahamic religions is one way in which the Hindu religion can be understood. It had other dimensions. So, what must have happened is that when these people left the Indus Valley, they carried with them the tradition of Hinduism, but with the passage of time, one particular version of their inheritance got accentuated, it became deeper, and this became monotheism. There is no fundamental contradiction, as far as I can understand, between monotheism of Abrahamic religions and the God or Brahman of the Hindu religions. So I think they are, again, two facets, two dimensions of the same common religion, rather than two views that are opposed to each other. That's how I would, however, look at it.
Yeah, I want to get deeper, and just quickly in the chat, regular viewer Oswald is asking your comments on Kali Yuga, and I want to ask you more about archaeology and anthropology and dating and the origins of mankind. That if you're taking an atheistic evolutionary perspective, out of Africa and the origin cradle of civilization being in Africa, versus if you have your own interpretation and saying that the cradle of civilization is India and that man originated in India and then left from there to the rest of the world, or you're saying just specifically the Jewish people originated in, or the biblical characters originated in India, and then obviously the Vedic system of Kali Yuga, and the difficulty of dating, because most I think Vedic scholars think Kali Yuga started about 5,000 years ago, and it mentioned the other yugas that go back long periods of time, as opposed to the archaeological, both the biblical criticist and Vedic criticist, that the evidence. When did this stuff happen? When did Krishna exist? If Krishna did exist, when does the evidence enter the written record or the archaeological and anthropological record, trying to figure out complicated history?
You see, the yuga system, the 4 yuga systems. In fact, I have published a paper in one archaeological journal in India, where I have tried to put this archaeological, genealogical, and astrological information together. My take is that the Krita Yuga, the first of the 4 yugas, the Krita Yuga started 4900 BCE and ended at about 3300. The Treta started at 3300 and ended at 2100. Dwapar started at 21, ended at 1300, which is the time of Krishna. And Kali Yuga existed from 1300 to 900. Now, this timing is consistent with some of the astrological readings, but I agree with David that typically most of the readings place Krishna at 3100 BC. I do not agree with that, because we have to see. I'll give you one example. The Hindu tradition says that Krishna lived about 30 generations before Buddha. Now, if a generation is reckoned at about 25 years. So 30 generations from Buddha would be about 800, 900 years. So if Buddha were at 500 BC, Krishna would be at 1300 BC. Krishna cannot be taken to 3100 BC because of genealogical problems and so on and so forth. We'll go into that. I can explain those points if you want in a bit. But let me take this question of evolution. See, my understanding is I'm perfectly comfortable with the origin of human beings in Africa 160,000 years ago, as genetic evidence by Stephen Oppenheimer and many others is suggesting. The Oppenheimer, who is the geneticist he and others also say that the people from Africa traveled around the rim of the Indian Ocean and reached South Asia around 40,000 years ago. And from here, there were migrations directly from Africa to Europe, as well as from South Asia to Europe. And the exodus, if it took place at all from here, was perhaps the last of these migrations. So my take is that the evolution, the scientific evidence of origin of man in Africa at 160,000 years is a different time frame, whereas the Adam and Swayambhu we are talking about is only 4,000 years ago. So this creation, the first man Adam or the creation by Swayambhu, should not be understood as the physical creation, it should be understood as a social creation. These people, Swayambhu and Adam taught people maybe agriculture, maybe other things, and they led to a creation of society rather than creation of man. And as far as God is concerned, I consider God to be the all-pervasive spirit. And so when the monkeys evolved into Homo sapiens, I would say the God within the monkey prompted them to evolve into human beings. When Adam created, I would say God present in the heart of Adam prompted Adam to create. So I don't get into this. I'm perfectly comfortable both with the Darwinian evolution as well as God's creation. I think we are creating a false dichotomy by putting God by putting God and evolution against each other. Because if God is within, when we evolve, then God helps us evolve. So the role of God as well as the role of evolution both go together with each other, and I see no reason why we should choose one or the other.
Just to clarify, I want to get more into this. My take in a spirit, because I'm a spiritualist, and maybe like Joseph Campbell. But what about the basic narrative of the biblical story, and the archaeology, that there was a Jewish people, there were millions of us, we were enslaved in Egypt, and we left Egypt for Israel. That it didn't happen in India, like we know. Saying there's a Jewish state in Israel today, and that's our narrative, that we were slaves in Egypt, millions of us, and that clearly happened. Like the names and details in the Bible list known places. I studied in Israel for 3 years. A lot of those places in Israel have the exact same name today as it does in the Bible. So I mean, if you're saying like the parallels, they're certainly interesting. But are you rejecting kind of like the obvious, that this stuff obviously happened in Israel and Egypt in the Middle East?
Well, I am as far as the names parallels are concerned, I have done study and I've given it in my book. There are almost more parallels with the Indian tradition, with the Indian.
Have you been to Israel?
No. Biblical narrative.
I'm curious if you yourself ever visited Israel.
No.
Okay,
I would like to.
The names and those places actually exist. A lot of them. There's archaeology.
Yeah. But wait a minute. The Bible does not use the word Egypt. The geographical descriptions in the Bible do not match with Egypt. If you see the description of the promised land that was given to Abraham, he talks about the land between two rivers. There is no land between two rivers anywhere in West Asia. The typical understanding is it's Jordan and Nile, or maybe Tigris and Euphrates, but then it doesn't gel with the larger picture. So what I am saying is that, look,
there's hundreds of place names in the Bible. Like Abraham comes from Ur and Kasdim. Those cities still exist. Abraham travels Israel. There's hundreds of place names that still exists today.
You know, the place named London, the place named London is there is a place named London in Australia, in Canada, in UK, and in USA. So when these Hebrews traveled from India to Israel, in course of time they gave these names to the places there. What we have to look for is the parallel of names at 1500 BC and before, not now. Today the names are parallel both in here as well as there. But the glaring example is Mitzrayim. The name Mitzrayim for Egypt, the first use of the name Mitzrayim for Egypt is at 1300 BC in Assyrian text. There is no Mitzrayim in West Asia before 1300 BC. So what was the Mitzrayim at the time of Abraham? There was no Mitzrayim in West Asia. Likewise, if we go step by step, point by point, what I can say is that the Bible only gives a narrative. The physical location of that narrative, the Bible does not tell. It is for us to look dispassionately at the physical descriptions and then see whether the Bible is talking about Indus Valley or Egypt. That is how I would approach the picture, rather than assuming either here or there. And I'm saying, as I gave the example of Yam Suf, the parting of the sea, then Taftan, the volcano. One of the problems in the Western model is that there is the Sinai, the blowing of the horn, the eruption of cloud smoke in Sinai. There is no volcano in the Sinai Peninsula. Whereas if you were traveling from Indus Valley to Israel, you would have crossed Taftan volcano, which even today spews out sulfuric gases. So like that, one after the other, we have to trace the travel of the Hebrews from Indus Valley to Israel, and then see how which matches, then which matches. That is how I would.
Yeah, I appreciate your scholarship and find it interesting. I mean, certainly to most Jews and Christian that would so to be even heretical. So let's take a more spiritual type. If you're looking like Joseph Campbell or even anthropological, and you're looking at common progressions. So like the ages, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, progressions of mankind, and then even progressions of societal stages of humans in terms of realization, enlightenment, building up a society, that religions are indicative of advances in society, and those advances largely happen all over the world in similar times. And then you have like a Joseph Campbell approach, a mythologization of these advancements through stories, narrative, and religion. So it would make sense that you have similar traditions, similar stories, and all traditions that are basically coming to teach the same lessons. And that could be true from an atheistic approach of history, or a more spiritualistic approach where you say there is some spiritual God, there are human souls, and God is teaching things to humankind. So, I mean, in some Hindu perspective, you could have that God sends different messengers to different people in different places to teach us largely the same thing, or possibly to teach us different things. But I'm saying generally, or even a Freemasonic approach, that God sends different messengers in different places to different people to largely teach us the same message.
Well, you see, my take is that we have to first understand what we mean by God. Now, my understanding is that our collective consciousness, the universal consciousness, all of us are interconnected at the unconscious level, and once the entire living universe connects with each other, that unconscious connection is what I am calling God. So when we say God sends messengers, what we are basically saying is that certain individuals are able to connect with the collective humanity or the consciousness of the humanity. Or you can say that God is the collective humanity. So if we understand God in that way, then there is no difficulty, because what you have is that humankind is evolving, and God is humankind. So I would say God himself is evolving in that sense. And in the process of evolution, some individuals are able to connect. We can call them prophets. We can call them, just like Jesus used to say, that I can feel God within me. So there have been Hindu saints that they have said that I have seen God. So what is this? What I would say is that there is no fundamental theological contradiction between the two. Basically, what we have is that the God is the collective uh, unconscious of all humanity, and those persons who connect with that collective unconscious are considered either prophets or avatara or whatever it is. So there is no there is no need. I do not find a dichotomy between the Western paradigm and the Hindu paradigm. That is the point I'm trying to make.
Well, you take two approaches. One that that people tap into this universal source, and it says the same thing in maybe different ways, or like you said, like both grandchildren of the same grandfather that have different memories or experiences, or that possibly the same universal spirit would say different things to different people for some reason that's beyond our understanding. For example, burial versus reincarnation, meat eating versus vegetarianism, different approaches. The anthropologists, archaeologists would say it's probably more connected to environment. But what about the clear contradictions between the Bible and the Vedas, such as burial versus reincarnation, burial versus um, cremation, reincarnation versus heaven and hell, vegetarianism versus meat eating, possibly different legal systems, and so on and so on.
See, we should make a distinction between the inner core of religious thought or theological ideas and the historical manifestation. When the Jews left India and they wandered for 40 years, X years, then they settled in Israel. They were influenced by their own, by their geography, by their situation, and they evolved their traditions. So when you're talking about things like burials and meat eating and fire worship and things of this kind, these are not really, these are legal, religious law. I don't know what word to use, but they're totally compatible with each other. In Hinduism, we have similar burials as well as fire worships and things of that kind. What, the basic question is of what is God, and I don't think there is so much contradiction between the concept of God in the monotheistic, in the Abrahamic religions and the Hindu religions. I would say, now one thing I want to clarify. You see, God is like infinity. Now, what part of infinity one person will tap into is anybody's guess. So it is quite possible that someone may tap into part X of the infinity, another person may tap into part Y. And so the same God, the same infinity, can give different messages. It is even possible that the two messages may be contradictory to each other. I'm not clear about it, because how infinity works, I don't know. But the point is that there is not one God in the sense that as if a person is standing above us and managing the world like puppets. No, that I'm not in tune with that. I think whenever a person connects with the collective human consciousness, he becomes godlike. And
Bharat, do you
the
believe in
God
a
can.
creator God? Do you
Yeah,
believe in a God
Bart,
outside of creation who
yeah, I have
who
a
was the
guess
maker
for
of all things seen and unseen?
one second, Paul. Just Bart's new to streaming, and so I brought on a live questioner. This is actually a scholar of Oxford from London, a Christian who has I think credentials in theology from Oxford or Cambridge, and Cambridge and a Christian background. So this, I think it's Bart's first time using this technology, but I brought on from the viewership. We have a scholar from London who wants to ask you a question or
Yes.
make a comment.
Please go ahead, Paul.
Good day, Bharat. Do you believe in a creator who was outside of time and space and matter, who called creation into being?
As far as I am able to understand, this question is not resolved. Even Stephen Hawking says that we don't know what happened before the Big Bang, whether the world existed or not. The concept of infinity also, we don't know whether it extends back to the infinite past or not. What we do know is that there was a Big Bang and there was some creation that took place at that point of time. Whether there was anything before that or not, we don't know. I do not think there is a God external to us. As I said very clearly, I think God is the name we give to our collective unconscious or universal collective unconscious. So
what
there
do
is
you
no
believe caused the Big
externalization.
Bang? What do you believe caused the Big Bang? And why do you think the Big Bang brought about an ordered creation?
Well, you see, let us think of it this way. There was matter that was coalesced into a single spot or something, it was infinite mass. Now, this matter has consciousness. The panpsychism, I'm a panpsychist in that sense. Panpsychism holds that all matter has consciousness. So this consciousness of that singularity, as I'm sure you would be familiar with that word, the consciousness of that singularity decided to explode. So in the Hindu text, we have a very famous word, Upanishad, that God was one and he decided to become many. So that is something that I'm thinking of, that we don't know exactly what was the process, but I cannot preclude that the singularity itself desired to become many and it exploded. That is how I would look at it.
So you're saying before the Big Bang, God existed?
No, I'm saying God and matter are coterminous. There is no God without matter. There is no matter without God. So we don't know what existed before the Big Bang. It is possible that matter and God both existed. It is possible they may not existed. I really do not know. But
why
we
do you limit
know
God to matter? Why are you limiting God to matter, saying without matter God can't exist? Why if you see God as a spirit, you see matter is something that God calls into being, just as he brought into being time and space.
Well, you see, God is spirit. I agree with that. There's no dispute about that. But the spirit is give me a break for half a minute. See, if all matter has consciousness and that consciousness coalesces, so we have an underlying layer of matter and the consciousness of the matter evolves and it coalesces. So that coalesced spirit, it becomes God. So you cannot separate consciousness, but it is possible. Honestly, it is possible that the coalesced spirit can assume its independent identity. Whether it can exist without matter, I don't know. I don't think so, but I have not been able to think through whether it can exist without matter. But I see no difficulty in thinking of matter and spirit and the two in interaction. So I would say that the consciousness of matter itself coalesced and became universal unconsciousness, and that is what we call God. Would be a simple statement I would put it.
For us, the idea that matter has consciousness is very alien. To us, matter is innate. Consciousness is a product of the mind.
Well, yes and no. Philip Goff and others, as I said, there is a panpsychist approach which says that all matter has consciousness. For example, the same matter can appear in two different places. It can be aware of itself. So I think, Paul, on that point, there is plenty of evidence now that matter is not just dead. It's not inert. Matter has consciousness. I see no reason why matter, the consciousness of matter, well, one can say that the consciousness of the mind is a more evolved consciousness. There I would agree with you. The consciousness of matter is very feeble. It's kind of 0.01 volts against 1000 volts or something of that type. But matter has consciousness. That is the way I would look at it.
If I could bring in, so Bharat, this is why I was telling you, like I said, this is live streaming, so it brings in the ability to instantaneously bring in people from all over the world into the conversation. So just ask Punditji, is that you, Atheist Punditji, or is someone else?
Yeah, I'm Atheist Punditji.
Okay, so we have a Hindu from India also that wants to join the conversation.
Okay.
Yes,
Hello,
Panditji.
Paul.
Good afternoon.
Hello, it's good evening out here. It is 9 o'clock, near about 9 o'clock. And I'm sorry, but I'm not so fluent in English, but I'll try to speak. I'll try to explain how much I can in English. Okay. So my question is for David. I just want to know the real story of Abraham. I have read the story, but I want to know it from you. You are a rabbi. I am a priest, Hindu priest. As you can see in my name, it is Punditji. Punditji means Brahmin, means we are priests of Hindus. We are idol worshippers. Okay. I know that father of Abraham, Tare, it is written in, I have read it from Wikipedia. It is written Tare, T-A-R-E-H, Tare. He was an idol worshipper. It means Abraham was also a Hindu at some time. I want to ask what happened, what exactly happened, why did this guy turn away? And these holy books, as people propagate or preach, are no holy books, they are all written by frauds. I will try to explain why I'm telling you these books are written by frauds. There is no God.
Written by whom, sorry? Written by whom? Prophets.
Pardon?
By fraud.
I mean, if you're giving a Hindu critique of the Bible, I mean, Duvid is more liberal in my approach. While I studied in Orthodox schools, and in terms of the biblical narrative and the understanding of how Abraham comes, that the world had descended into idol worship, and then Abraham is the singularity man to recognize the falseness of idols, and God rewards him by speaking to him and turning him into a prophet, and allowing the Jewish people to be descended from him. That's the Orthodox approach.
Do it. Let me intervene here. Panditji, just hold on for 1 minute.
Okay.
See, Yoga Vashisht, you will be familiar with Yoga Vashisht. There is a text called Yoga Vashisht, which is the teachings given by the Guru of Ram to Ram. Now, Yoga Vashisht is not idol worshipping at all. Yoga Vashisht talks about the one God, Satchidanand Brahma Ghan Brahma. That is the one truth, dense God. Now, that idea of Yoga Vashisht is exactly parallel to the idea of monotheist Abraham. So what appears to have happened is that Dashratha or Tera may have been an idol worshipper. The people generally may have been idol worshipper. But whether it was Abraham or it was Ram, he rebelled against this, I would say, mindless idol worshipping, whatever it may be. And he propounded, Ram as well as Abraham propounded the idea of a formless God, which is very much part of the Yoga Vashisht and as well as Abraham's teaching. So, as far as I am concerned, the teachings of Abraham and Ram are both not idol worshipping. In fact, in the Bhagavad Purana, one of the texts, Krishna says one thing very clearly. He says that those who worship idols of wood, stone, and mud are inferior than animals. So, what I'm trying to say is that within the Hindu, within the life of Rama and Krishna, there is a deep sense of non-idol worshipping. They don't oppose necessarily, but they do not worship idols. And idol worship of Rama and Krishna obviously started after, much later. So I think as far as
that Abraham's God is not a formless God. Abraham's God. We are made in the image and the likeness of God. So we can relate to God. So God has a form. God is the father of Abraham. He calls Abraham, and he calls Abraham out to create a holy nation, a nation dedicated to himself, with whom he can form a covenant relationship.
No, that's beautiful, Paul. That's beautiful. There's no issue there. See, let us think of you or me being Abraham. So Abraham connected with God means Abraham connected with this universal consciousness of mankind, of humankind, of this entire universe. And that universal consciousness encouraged Abraham to start a new form of worship, which is monotheism. And that universal consciousness made a covenant with Abraham. So what's the difficulty? It doesn't have to be an external God to make a covenant. See, the point is, the biblical narrative is entirely consistent with an all-pervasive monist God. It's consistent. I'm not saying it is the only way. Monotheistic as well as monist, both are consistent with the biblical narrative of Abraham and Moses. Later on, Jesus, I have not studied, I don't know, but between, as far as Abraham and Moses are concerned, their concept of God is consistent with the Hindu monist concept. So it can be two different versions of God which are being talked of in different in the two traditions. I do not see a contradiction.
Just for the sake of my audience, like, I enjoy these conversations. I've been doing interfaith for decades now, and usually interfaith is respectful, and people agree to disagree, but at the heart of it, there are deep contradictions and disagreements from religions. You could take a universalistic approach, or you could take a more combative, conflicting, like exclusivist approach. And I know within Judaism, a lot of, so to say, Orthodox Jews, it's forbidden to do interfaith. And even within Hinduism or Christianity, there's schools that don't, that reject interfaith because they don't want to lead other people to believe that we're, so to say, condoning your tradition, and it's saying that, no, unfortunately, my tradition is true and your tradition is not true. I'm sorry to break it to you. But that's not Duvid's approach, and that's not Bharat's approach. And I don't know if Paul is more an exclusivist Christian, or if Punditji would take an exclusivist approach to Hinduism. And these conversations, or even disputations, so to say, are extremely important, because interfaiths are usually overly friendly and don't get into the heart of these contradictions and differences. And most of the exclusivists don't participate in these conversations.
Well, the truth is, we're largely ignorant of each other's faiths in depth. I mean, we have a superficial knowledge of Hinduism or Christianity or Judaism, but we sort of have our expertise in our own field. Now, it's interesting to hear how other faiths make sense of creation, make sense of the world, make sense of their life and the meaning of their life. Well, the difficulty is the use of language. When we use these terms like consciousness, what are we actually referring to? It's become it's become a sort of foundational word for Bharat. It's like everything's been reduced to this consciousness all the time. Are we talking about thought life? Are we talking about the human spirit? Or are we talking about God and his interaction with mankind?
Well,
Or can we even create a common lexicon? Yeah, go ahead, Punditji.
Yeah, I want to ask this same thing. Somebody told that God came down and met Abraham, right? Is that true?
God spoke to Abraham. God speaks to his people. The people
God
of faith
spoke
can hear God.
God spoke to Abraham. How did Abraham recognize that God is speaking to him? Abraham might not have actually met God before. How did he recognize?
It's through faith. I mean, he believed it was God, and the message that he gave Abraham was a message of enlightenment. It guided Abraham. It guided Abraham into a new life, into a life with God instead of a life without him.
It could be anybody. How did he know
Panditji,
that God was speaking to him?
Panditji, answer to that question is that when God speaks, he leaves no questions unanswered. In our tradition, in the Hindu tradition, it is said that once you attain God, you attain perfect bliss, and there are no questions beyond that. So when God spoke with Abraham, Abraham must have felt a sense of completeness, no further doubts, questions, or when Jesus felt God in him, that is how he must have felt. Now, you cannot prove it. There is no way that you can prove that Ram was Avatara or not Avatar. There is no way you can prove that Abraham spoke with God or did not speak. What matters is that if these divine persons gave a message to humanity and they led to advancement of humanity, that is God's play. That's what matters. So I think we should get out of this trying to find differences between this kind of a thing. You see, let us realize that in interfaith discussion, we are separated by 3,500 years. If my hypothesis is correct, Krishna or Moses left Indus Valley at 1300 or 1500 BCE. So for 3,500 years, these traditions have evolved in different languages, different geography, different contexts. And today they are coming back and talking to each other. So there would have been differences. But our ability lies to peer inside the differences and look at the inner core. And all I am saying is that I do not find the inner core to be contradictory. That is my clear statement.
Well, God made promises to Abraham. It wasn't just like a feeling of bliss that he gave him. He said, you will be the father of a great nation. And he called Abraham to a specific place and told Abraham that this place will become his home. And he sort of, he gave Abraham guidance. So it wasn't just like an ethereal voice, which made him feel good. It had a practical outworking. It led to the beginning of a holy nation.
Can I come in? I want to make a point. First thing, these holy books, this Torah, Injil, or this Injil means Bible, or this Quran, these speaks lies about these books lies about idol worship. Idol worship has got nothing to do with divinity or God. It is a subject related to justice and injustice. How come God of Abraham doesn't find out what I am doing with idols? They are outrightly lying about idol worship. These holy books. I am 100% sure about that. And as the honorable professor mentioned, he has some kind of what we call here that Atma Gyan. Abraham has got no kind of Atman. He was just a rebel. He tried to instill unjust rules into the society.
Panditji, I think we have to be very respectful to other religions. I don't think it is.
Well, we're just making
I
the point
don't
that the Bible forbids idol worshiper. If he's defending, say like, I am what you call an idol worshiper, and I mean, it points to the contradictory nature. If you support, so to say, idol worship or practice, what do you make with the Bible and the message of the Bible, and say that I don't believe what I'm doing is idol worship or wrong, and if your God said that this practice is forbidden, your God is inaccurate.
No, you see, as I mentioned about Krishna.
No. Let me come in here. Sorry, I'm for intervening. Sweeping things under carpet doesn't make everything clean. We have to get into the root of the cause, root of this cause, root of this problem. The root of this problem is idol worship versus monotheism. Idols are no gods. We create idols are deities. Deity and a god are two different things. An avatar and a prophet are two different things. Avatar doesn't mean prophets. Avatar is something different. Prophets are something different. This prophethood business, this Abrahamic cults, I must say religions or cults. So, sorry if I'm hurting anyone, but these are not good cults. These are cults who preach injustice. This is the difference between dharmic traditions, dharmic way of life, and Abrahamic cults.
Okay, so Panditji, what you are saying is okay. No, listen to me. What you are saying is when you talk to like
Mohit, we have another guest, actually a chess player and engineer from India, Mohit.
Shalom, sir. Good evening, sir. All of you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Panditji, what you are saying is when you talk to when you pray in front of a stone, okay, then that stone talks to you back, okay? Is that so?
No, we don't pray in front of a stone. Stone is used for a different purpose.
What is the purpose then?
Yeah, you invite me in this studio. I'll show you exactly what I'm doing with this stone. It is to
no, I don't want to know. No. No, I am Hindu by myself. My name is Mohit.
Okay.
I'm a Hindu by myself.
Okay.
So you can't say that like if you are praying in air or like you're monotheist or something like that, you can't blame them. Okay.
What I am doing, you know better than me. I am the priest.
Listen, I think Mohit and Panditji,
Yes,
can I intervene for a minute?
Sure, please.
Panditji, 1 minute hold कीजिए. You see, every religion has some symbols.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir.
The Jewish tabernacle has cherubim or the angels on the side of it. The Christians have their cross. The Muslims have the Kaaba. Similarly, the Hindus have their idols. There is no more than that. So let us not get into creating differences where there are none existing. Let us honor that different religions have different symbols, and those symbols, one of the symbols that if I have read Swami Shivananda and others, they very clearly say that idols are not God. They are only a stepping stone to God. You can visualize God in form an idol. Now the difficulty is 1 minute.
No.
I think Abrahamic religions are right in saying that God, the idol should not be understood to be God. The fine distinction is idol as a stepping stone to God, or the Christian cross that you hang on your neck as a stepping stone to God is different than worshipping the idol. The reason that Hinduism has declined, one of the major reason is that we have started to worship the idols disconnected with God. So if you connect the idol with God, then all the religions become similar. But if you disconnect idols with God, then the Abrahamic religions are correct in saying that idols are not God. So the degeneration of Hindu worship of idols, we need to re-examine ourselves and correct ourselves rather than decry the Abrahamic religions. That is how
God is pure. God is holy. And God speaks to us directly. He speaks to us spirit to spirit. heart to
Then-
heart. So we're speaking to a living God. That's why the symbol is not that important. What is important is that you connect with God. You have a relationship with the living God. You are attuned to hear His voice. You are attuned to follow His lead and His Spirit. Now, His Spirit will lead you into holiness. His Spirit will lead you into all truth. His Spirit will lead you into a holy life. It will purify your heart. Now, the idol can't do that. The symbol can't do that. The symbol cannot forgive your sins. The symbol cannot cleanse your mind. The symbol is dead, but God is alive. So you have this interactive relationship with a living God. This is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Can I come in? Categorically, I am telling you, idols have got nothing to do with divinity. Idols we create are deities. They are our role models. They have got nothing to do with God or anything like that. It is the narrative which has been said by this Abraham. What do you say, Prophet Abraham? It is that narrative they have said. These Abrahamic religions have said in front of the public. They say that we Hindus, the idol worshippers, they worship different gods. Sorry, they are idols we worship are not gods. They are deities. Deities. They have got nothing to do with divinity. It has got everything to do with education. Idols have got everything to do with education, justice, and injustice. Okay, what I am
Panditji.
doing, I can show you live demonstration in this channel, in this particular channel. I have to bring in an idol. What I am doing with idol, I can clearly demonstrate. Find me what I am doing wrong. Okay.
No, but Panditji, what you are saying and what Paul is saying are very similar. You are also saying that idols are not divinity. That's what Paul is also saying. Symbols are not important. So I think we should understand that the different traditions have expressed the same concepts in different ways. So I'm repeating, when Paul is saying symbols are not important, then Panditji is saying that idols are not divinity. To my mind, they're saying this almost the same thing. So what is the contest?
No, the contest is they are preaching unjust rules as just rules. These rules are from God. These are just rules. They are preaching that killing
No,
cows.
that's a different thing. Look, Panditji, every religion has a theological level and it has a legal or a practical level. In Hindus, there are many laws. In Abrahamic religions, there are many laws. The laws are specific to a particular people, a particular time, a particular context. There is no need to fight with laws.
No.
In Hinduism, we have different laws between Shaivites and Vaishnavites and others. So
Yeah,
that
but
doesn't mean
practically we do fight. I mean, if Punditji is a Hindu priest, he's like, no. I mean, the children of Abraham, so to say, the Bible does have some sort of clear message that is not just about belief, but the practice of idols. And factually, the Muslims and Hindus went to war, and countless people have died and shed blood over this universal approach that it's not just that my God gave a message to my people for how we live in our territory, but it's a universal law that applies to all people. And obviously, Muslims, under the pretext of the God of Abraham and possibly allowed by the church and the Jews, that waged war and destroyed idols all across India.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm trying to explain. They are preaching something which is Abraham and his father lived in the same room.
I'm a liberal Jew. Just to add in, I'm a pretty liberal Jew. My take is the minority opinion. Like among most Orthodox Jews, the opinion is that Hinduism is in fact idol worship. I mean, that's why I'm having the conversation. But I know that most of my colleagues, disagree with me and would openly, denounce me. They might not. They're friendly people. I'm not saying they're bad people, but they would openly denounce me and say, no, you're wrong. That's idol worship.
But
And
in
I don't know about
Christianity,
Paul.
we live by grace, right? We are not saved through our own efforts or by obeying a set of laws. We are saved by the grace of God. It's a gift. And that
Paul,
grace is a benevolent gift. It means you become a people of love. So I'm not going to go to Hindus and condemn them. I'm going to go to Hindus and say, Jesus loves you. And Jesus wants your soul to be in heaven with him. And he has just come to show you
I
a
mean,
path.
you're in London
a
also.
path
I'm
to
saying, like,
heaven.
your ancestors colonized India, and part of it was because you thought that Indian and Hinduism was, backwards and idol worshippers, that was part of the justification that the crown and England used for the colonization, if you want to call the crimes against India.
Well, if you go to people with an arrogant heart, that is not of God. God calls us to humility, to come in love, to give out the hand of fellowship. Now, obviously, we have a path. Jesus is a pure path to the Father, to heaven.
but
And
Paul,
this is the path. We
Jesus
call you
is
on the narrow path. We're not come to condemn you. Jesus didn't come into the world to condemn the world. He came to save, to be graceful, to give people eternal life, to show them that this is God's way, and it is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
Follow this
Paul,
path.
the only problem is that is Jesus's way the only way or not? Can there be other ways of God?
How do
That
we
is the
cancel
question.
our sins? That's a good question, Bharat. The question is, how do we get pure? How do we cancel our sins?
Yeah. All I
I mean,
am
in the
saying
Jewish
is,
tradition, they sacrificed animals, right? Jesus came as the perfect sacrifice. He was the spotless lamb who gave his life. He didn't come to condemn Hindus. He came to show love to
here.
Hindus. He gave his life. Through
Paul,
his blood, we can be washed clean and purified and can be acceptable to the Father.
Paul, I agree with what you're saying, but the question is that can Rama or Ramakrishna Paramhansa or Shivanand, XYZ, can they bring the same sense of peace and salvation that Jesus did or not?
No, because
there
Jesus,
is no.
You see,
There is
Jesus
1 minute.
is God incarnate. He is God
But
made
why
flesh.
can that
He
be
is
no?
divine.
That is fine. No one is denying that. What I am saying is Rama and Krishna are also life God incarnate, and they can also provide the same kind of salvation that Jesus did. That is the issue. So I think we will be wasting our time if we put up a straw man and then shoot it down. No one is challenging Jesus. The question is Jesus's life is the only way, or there are other ways? Can God speak only through Jesus or through others? Is God speaking to me right now?
Jesus
That is the
existed.
question.
Jesus existed before the
Yes, but I am
creation
existing.
of the universe.
I am existing
He is an
today.
eternal God. So he is part of the Godhead. And he came, he lowered himself, he humbled himself, and he came and walked amongst men. And he humbled himself even to death upon a cross. He gave his life. He was brutally killed. So he gave his life.
Paul, there have been
because
so many.
Through that, we are lifted up.
Paul, you're not answering my question. I'm not disputing what you're saying, that Jesus died. I am asking you very pointedly, is Jesus the only way, or there are other human beings in whom God has descended in the same manner as Jesus and who can provide salvation same manner as Jesus? Yes or no?
If Jesus is the perfect sacrifice for sin, why would we need any more sacrifice?
No, that's not the
It's
point.
not that Jesus was simply a man with a message. He gave his life. He shed his blood.
Paul, you're refusing to answer my question.
Are you politely saying no, Paul? And like obviously Jews would contest what both of you are saying, and then saying that no, I mean Jesus, Krishna, or none of these could provide salvation. That only Jehovah, the God of Abraham, could. But say if you're taking a liberal approach, but in essence, are you evading the question and just politely saying no, that only Jesus could save them and Rama and Krishna can't save them?
Well, I'm saying that Jehovah is Elohim. He's the triune God, the three in one, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In that Godhead, he is complete and he is eternal. Now, he came from that Godhead to us. Now, these figures, other figures, to us, the mysterious figures, because they haven't been revealed to us through Scripture. But we know that in Jesus, we already have the answer. So we're not looking for other answers.
No,
I mean, you're the only Christian on the panel here, Paul. I mean, you could say we, but it's like you're the only Christian here on the panel.
Yeah, I'm speaking as we in the sense of we, the brotherhood of Christ.
No. Paul, I have nothing against what you are saying. All I am saying is that in Hinduism, we also have a Trinity, and that resides within the human being. So we can go into that. The basic point I would like you to consider is that with all grace to all respects to Jesus, there can be other Jesuses, other human beings like Jesus, and other places. So let us work with that rather than build borders and then get into things like inquisitions and killing of Canaanites and jihads and things of that kind. So
well,
let
all
us
I'm
avoid
saying,
that.
Bharat, is that Jesus is not just a human being. He was divine. He was God. He had a dual nature.
But
so
can there be other divine
when I
person?
speak of Jesus, I'm not just speaking about a man. I'm speaking about the God-man.
I agree, but can there be other God-men or not? Yes or no?
Well, the question is, why would you need it? If you've eaten a meal and
No,
you're
the
full,
question is not why would you need it?
You need another
Well,
meal.
Paul, if your
would
answer
need
is
it.
no, just say no. If you're saying like no, that Jesus is the only God-man according to your understanding of Christianity, why can't you just say no? Or are you trying to leave the door open that it's possible that Krishna and Rama are also God-men?
No, the reason I'm leaving the door open, because I want Bharat to know that I want to be gracious to him. I want to hear what he believes. I want to give credit to him for what he thinks and what he says. And I just want to say, I present Jesus to you. I present Jesus, and it's for you to judge. Is Jesus the God-man who can save you, or do you need somebody else? It's for you to judge, Bharat.
No, that's not the point. The
If I
point
could
for
throw
you
just one of
is
my regular viewers, I mean, this conversation could be endless, and I encourage you to have it. We could go on to one of my regular viewers wants to know if Bharat's opinion on, American Hindus, so to say, like Alan Watts and Allen Ginsberg, if you're familiar with those characters or had any comment on them.
I'm familiar with Allen Ginsberg.
I must apologize. I don't know about Alan Watts.
I didn't think you were that much into American culture. I'm more a theologian, but a lot of people watching, they don't really know or understand Hinduism except through contemporary American culture.
Maybe, but I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question because I just
don't
know.
What I want to put Bharat at peace over is this: Jesus did not come into the world to condemn Hindus. He came in the world to save Hindus, to love Hindus. We haven't come to dominate you. We've come to offer the hand of grace and godliness.
Paul, Ramakrishna Paramhansa also came into this world to save the Christians.
From what?
From the crimes that they were doing in India.
No, but we're all criminals. We're all sinners, but we're saved by grace.
No, that's not the point. Just as Jesus did not come to condemn Hindus, Ramakrishna Paramhans did not come to condemn the Christians. So we have different God-men given different names, appearing in different places at different times. Let us honor all of them and let us not put one above the other, because I don't think as human beings we have the competence, even understanding, to compare Ramakrishna Paramhansa and Shivanand and Jesus. So why get into that? Why don't?
But you see, our religion, Bharat, is not a product of man's thoughts. We believe that God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And God's ways are higher than our ways. So what I'm
All-
relaying is what God teaches us. He teaches us this way. He teaches us this path.
all with due respects, the conflicts between the Abrahamic religions, Christians versus Jews, Jews versus Muslims, Muslims versus Christians, are arising because of this very limited or narrow, with due respects, I'm no affront, narrow approach to God. God is very gracious. He is merciful. He is large, and he does not like being put into cubby holes like Jesus and things of that kind. So if there was one Jesus, there are many Jesuses, and there is no way for you to know whether there was another Jesus or not Jesus. How can you say that? Do you have the competence?
Yeah, because Jesus said, I am the way, the truth,
Yeah,
and the
but
life.
Ramakrishna,
Nobody comes to the Father except through me. Jesus said that himself. You've got to go through him to get to the Father. But he is worthy. If he will get you to the Father, take that offer. If he will take you to paradise, follow that path.
Okay, can I come in? I want to go to hell. What is that to you? I personally, I want to go to hell. What is that to you? You
It
are
says
here
in the
to-
Bible that it's the will of God that none shall perish, but all shall come to the knowledge of his saving grace. God loves everybody and he wants to save everybody.
You are agent of God who sends people to heaven or hell. Why you are interested?
No, it's God who's interested. God wants to save God made us all, and we're all precious to him. And this is why he offers salvation to all people.
Let me
Why
just, because
people are coming with
Professor
ideas?
Jhunjhunwala is he's 77 years old. It might be late for him. I host these conversations a long time, but I wanted to specifically bring on Professor Jhunjhunwala to share some of his research or work. So I'm not sure if you enjoy these kind of like debates or disputation. I'm happy to host this, but I want to be respectful of Professor Jhunjhunwala and saying for we could have a discourse at a different time or a different location. I wanted to be respectful of Professor Jhunjhunwala because I appreciate him coming on.
No, I think it's enough time we are repeating the same discussions. I would be happy to close this session now and then maybe have another session if you're.
Okay, so let me just give Paul, if you want to say closing word, and I'll let Punditji say closing word, and then Mohit, if you just keep it very briefly, and then I'll wrap up with the professor, and hopefully said I'll volunteer to help him out with the technology if he wants to partake in more conversations.
Okay, amen. The amazing thing is that God is love. God has every one of his creation is precious to him. His creation is precious to him. And he wants us to have a life where we prosper and we fulfill our potential, and our life is filled with joy, with the fruits of the Spirit, with peace. God wants us to live in peace with each other. He wants the harmony amongst men. So the message that Jesus brought is a message of love. If Christians have used it in an arrogant way or used it to try and dominate other people, that is wrong. Christians have to go in humility to other faiths and say, we want to hear what your heart says. And we want to assure you that no matter how much sin you have in your life, the grace of God is sufficient for you. He can bring
thanks for
salvation.
joining, Paul, and we'll continue the conversation. And Punditji, if you want to give some sort of remark or closing words, and hopefully we could continue this conversation. I just want to be respectful of Professor Jhunjhunwala's time.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you, Dubirji, for inviting me, letting me speak. Next time, I want to come with an idol. I want to show it to you to judge yourself what I am doing wrong with the idols. This is all I want from you. I want to have you. I want you to observe everything, every rituals I do with the idols. I will make you understand what I am doing with the idols. Then find fault with me. This is what all I want to do. If you will be kind enough to let me in, I'll come with an idol. Thank you.
Yeah, we could reach out and maybe we could organize a separate stream. And if Professor Jhunjhunwala wants to join, I'd be more than honored to have him again. But yeah, reach out and we could do a separate stream. So I appreciate you joining. Nice talking with you, and hopefully I'll keep on working also with Jai Devi, and if it's interesting to Jai Devi, maybe I'll try to book Professor Jhunjhunwala on a few different programs. And I assume you speak fluent Hindi, Professor Jhunjhunwala, but maybe I'll book you on a popular Hindi speaking program also. So yeah, just reach out, Punditji, and we'll talk more. So Mohit is also an India Hindu engineering student. His first time coming on a stream. Did you have something you wanted to say to Professor Jhunjhunwala? And also you could reach out to me and we'll talk a different time. But
First of all, sir, it's a pleasure that I'm getting to talk to you both, Mr. Bharat sir and Dude sir. It's a pleasure, sir. And according to me, sir, and Panditji also, respect to you, Panditji. And sir, according to me, God is one, only and only. There's only one God. We can't keep on fight and have conflicts about this thing, but God is only one. That's all.
okay, yeah, so great. I'm Mohit's chess coach actually. Duvid's a chess master to some extent and coach people all over the world. And Mohit found me playing chess, so I appreciate you coming on, and hope your studies and everything are going well. So I really appreciate you
Pleasure,
coming on, Professor. I found your work fascinating. As I've been doing interfaith for like 20 years, and a lot of times it doesn't really lead anywhere. It's nice to learn from people, and people say like, this is what my tradition teaches. This is my beliefs, and we chant a few songs, and sometimes we could really like people who've studied multiple traditions could point out similarities, but at the same time, dispute and conflict is real, and even war, is real. God forbid. A lot of times, the people on the opposite sides of battlefields are most, sometimes it's ethnic, but a lot of times it's religious. And historically, Jews disputations conversations between, disputations between Jews and Christians led to death and war, and also Hinduism and Islam. That a lot of times there were disputations and it couldn't be resolved and ended up on the battlefield. So that's why I agree with Professor Jhunjhunwala, and I'm a universalist. I self-identify as a Hindu, but I also believe in Judaism, even though I recognize that many of the contradictions have no good answers. I hope we'll be able to continue the conversation. As I'd be honored to help Professor Jhunjhunwala with his technology if he wants to participate in more of these conversations. A lot of times they're less friendly, but maybe we could find a more academic venue. Like Paul is more used to like Speaker's Corner, if anyone knows, in London, where it's combative, and that's more real. Like fact is, combative disputations are probably more real, like Hare Krishna preaching on a street corner, and you only have friendly disputations within synagogues, temples, or universities, because in reality conflict is quite real. So big honor. So feel free to close us out with any word or message that you want to give. Your channel Amazon page is linked in the description. If you want to close with a chant also, that's fine, or some message.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Okay. Did you want to close with some sort of chant or some sort of message?
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let there be peace, peace, and peace. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Okay, great. So I'm going to end the program, and you could be in contact with me through social media or email, Twitter, Facebook, if you want to do further programming. And I really appreciate. I hope this was useful to the audience, and but you could get a feel of kind of the internet. You could talk with just your friends and have friendly conversations, but the power of the internet and live streaming is it opens up to everybody. And a lot of times it'll lead to the more I don't call it confrontation. Paul's also a friendly person, but lead towards more direct conversations with the people you may not end up speaking with in the closed corridors, the interfaith or university discussions. So thanks a lot, and hope to see everyone
Thanks a
again.
lot. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thank you very much.
Good night. Good night.
Shalom, sir.